Welcome back to Pewdiepie. I'm Zui and I hope you enjoy today's video. But before we get right into it, I'm obligated to remind you to click either the like or dislike button, commenting something down below, and of course, sharing the video after you finished watching it. If you have any suggestions or ideas for a story, my Discord link is in my link tree that is down in the description, as well as my Patreon and Ko-fi for any donations you may want to send my way. Anyways, let's get right into it. You woke in the late evening hours of the day. Your eyes hurt and you had a mild headache. Slowly you crawled out of bed. It was 5 PM, and in 2 hours your first night shift would begin. A month ago you sent a job application to the fast entertainment mega pizzaplex. You had been out of your previous job for 2 months now and had trouble finding any work. Your funds had been dwindling, and a low-paying job at the pizzaplex was one of your many plan Bs. The next one on the list would have been to work either at Hamby Humble's Burger Farm as a fry cook, or at Bond's Burgers as technical support and maintenance. As all 3 restaurants were hiring all at the same time, and had the lowest prerequisites. As of right now, you had been trained by the day shift. However, what annoyed you so far had been the fact you haven't been given a uniform yet. Just a simple security cap. Brian, the day shift guard, had explained it to you. Apparently, after the place had burned down, people would enter the ruined building, even while the place was being restored, in the hopes to get any surviving merchandise for free. And before you came 3 other people who took the uniforms and just ran. However, you were dreading tonight. As of right now, the shift guard was the quasi-night shift due to the imbalance of employees, which meant you would spend the night with the man Brian had very carefully warned you of. So did Kevin the engineer. Even Charlotte the receptionist had only a few good things to say about him. Not that you had ever seen him, as by the time he arrived, you were already sent home. Whenever the time for work came, you just dressed appropriately. You put on a black t-shirt and over it a white buttoned-up, long-sleeved. Black pants, black shoes. Then you put your hair in a ponytail. You sighed in front of a mirror and mentally prepared yourself. Before leaving your small apartment, you grabbed your backpack. In it were some snacks and 2-liter bottles of your favorite drink, called Punch O Raspberry Revolution. You didn't have a car, so you used public transport. Thankfully, a bus line stopped right in front of the pizzaplex, so it wasn't as bothersome as it could have been. Slowly, you entered the building. It was 30 minutes before the gutters closed. This meant the night shift had already started 30 minutes ago. But you weren't late. Just how you had been told to arrive. And so far no one had complained, so you accepted it. Normally, Brian was waiting for you in the entrance lobby with a list of chores he was too lazy to do. And after finishing those, you just walked behind him until shift was over. With shaking legs, you went to the employee lounge, where your eyes widened, and you almost dropped your bag. On a chair that was seemingly way too small for him, sat a giant man, at least 6'5", maybe more. His bulging muscles stretched his night guard uniform to the absolute limit. It looked quite uncomfortable, actually. But you assumed this had to be the biggest size they had available. His skin was light brown, most definitely tanned. And from what you could see, thanks to his rolled-up sleeves, was that his arms were quite hairy. He had no beard, short black hair, and what you assumed was a knife scar ran across his face. His eyes were blue, and what you would admit was the only cuddly feature of his was his round nose. The man had been reading a newspaper when you came in, and a steaming cup of coffee stood on the metal table next to him. Slowly he looked at you. "You must be Intern." What the hell was that accent? He stooped up and walked up to you. Next to him you felt so small. He held out one of his giant hands for you to shake. "Dmitry Popov." You blinked. Pop-off? You furrowed your brows without realizing. "Name?" You nodded. Oh! Finally you understood. Quickly you placed your hand in his as he began a quite powerful handshake. God, he could rip your arms off for sure. You looked up at his face. It looked stern, like it was cut out of stone. And the expression was like that of a parent who had caught their child stealing from a cookie jar. With a shaking voice, you introduced yourself. "Da, good. Good making your acquaintance. Did you do night shift before? What did Brian tell you?" Straight to the point. Okay. He said that the night shift is easy as it's quite quiet in the plex. You just need to remember your patrol routes. He nodded, his face not moving an inch. "Night shift at Pizza Plex is easy, duh, but there are things you need to think of. For one, most places are dark, so you need to know where you are at all times." Without as much as giving you a second look, he began walking outside, leaving the papers and the coffee behind. Quickly, before he continued talking, you threw your bag down and ran after him. "There are between 3 and 5 patrols in the night shift contract you need to do, every night, at all costs," he said as you caught up to him. Despite his large frame, he was very fast, probably thanks to his thick legs. Blushing, you side-eyed him. He probably had a six-pack, but you couldn't quite tell due to a slightly bloated belly. Also, he reeked of vodka and cheap aftershave. Something about it was eerily familiar, though you couldn't quite tell just yet what it was. You followed this Terminator through the Pizzaplex. It was scary. Only a few lights were on, allowing you to see everything while still dousing the place in an uncomfortable twilight. "Pizza place not dangerous. You don't have to look so tense." Were you looking tense? Well, maybe, but anxious would be a better word. "How much of Pizza Plex you have seen?" You thought audibly for a moment. I think everywhere customers are allowed. Oh, and I helped out in parts and services once or twice, so I know where that is.
Good. Then you know all places you need to be for tonight.
So far it was as per usual, it seemed. Just no people. And a way more intimidating teacher. However, despite your best efforts, you still managed to yawn. Immediately, Dmitry asked,
"Are you used to the sleep schedule change yet?"
You rolled your eyes. To you it was obvious. You wouldn't be yawning like a bored child otherwise. When you didn't reply, he looked at you. He could see on your face that you were desperately trying not to yawn a second time. It amused the man a lot. "Are there any dangers?" You asked as you round the corner to enter Rockstar Row.
Ugh. Duh. That's why we're going here.
You gulped.
Machines get bored. Bored machines are bad for their moving bits.
After he saw your questioning face, he continued explaining.
Night got a job easy if you know how to deal with unruly machines. Give the chicken some pizza. She will leave you alone for whole night. Give the attractive wolf a compliment whenever she comes by to see you, and she will leave you alone eventually. And allow the bear to walk with you for a while when he requests it, even if you have just finished a patrol. You just go on your next one if you have to.
And suddenly, Dimitri growled.
Ugh. And don't get toddler gator or get away with destroying property.
You blinked. Wait, what?
Ugh. Dimitri will show you when time comes.
Your stomach turned. But eventually, you reached one of the many security offices spread around the pizzaplex. Even though there was always only one human guard, the entire building had a lot of security offices. So guard was never far away from one when they walked around. Each office had access to all cameras in the mega pizzaplex and was equipped with a full first aid station and the ability to shut down attractions or even the entire building. It also had other monitoring equipment like GPS trackers for every customer who had a novelty fast watch. Each one also had a command station that controlled the staff bots.
It's time for your break.
You furrowed your brows. Already? That was a cushy job, wasn't it? However, it seemed like it was only a break for you, as Dimitri logged into the camera system. With interest, you stood behind him. His face was mirrored in the glass of the screen. It had shifted from a stoic frown to a squinted hyper-focus. Are you looking for something specific? You asked curiously.
Machines walk freely through pizzaplex, gotta monitor them, so they don't damage property. Through silly...
He stopped talking. On screen was Chica. She stood in front of a red door.
Chicken is trying to get in kitchen. Dimitri will be back in 10 minutes.
You gulped as you watched him stand up and leave. The moment he closed the door behind him, you jumped on the chair and stared mesmerized at the camera. Chica was banging against the door with her fists. Just like in a horror movie, you watched as the giant suddenly appeared behind her. Well, giant only technical. He was about her size. You watched as Dimitri slapped his hand on her shoulder, holding her in place. Her head turned 360 degrees, and then opened her beak in surprise. You really wanted to know what they talked about, but eventually the chicken animatronic left on her own accord. With hanging shoulders, sure, disappointed as well, but nothing had happened. Honestly, you had thought you would just flat out beat her up. It was 10 minutes on the dot when he re-entered the room.
Make place for Dimitri, he ordered you.
Quickly you jumped away. As the man sat down, he rolled the chair over to the staff-bot command station, quickly typing a few lines.
Chicken wants to try new special pizza Bombay. I granted the request if she goes back to room for rest of the night.
You nodded, and then made an interested hum. What's on the pizza?
He shrugged. Curry. Ironically, chicken strips. Not that machine cares about chicken. Some broccoli. Dimitri like broccoli. And something called Freddy's spicy cheese. It's delicious. It has become my favorite new pizza.
Huh.
A making machine make food and deliver to her room. Then lock it down for rest of night.
You blinked. So, as a night guard, it is our job to entertain them or to capture them? He looked at you and smiled. You actually listened to him.
Da. We entertain machines. Make them go to room, then log room if needed. Also, we entertain them more inside if possible.
You huffed and slowly repeated. Entertain the robots, capture them, entertain them more if needed, and go on the 5 patrols?
Duh.
I'm guessing check cameras too?
Duh. Staff machines stupid. Often ignore mess they are supposed to clean, so need to force them with this.
He slapped the keyboard of the staff bot command station.
At least until we get a new janitor.
Over the next 2 hours, the two of you successfully entertained Freddy and Roxy, even the daycare attendant, your favorite of the Pizzaplex cast. He had showed up and wanted to finger paint, which of course Dimitri wasn't up to do, so he simply sent you to the daycare instead. Either way, the robot was happy and would at least for the rest of the night stay in his place. By now you were on your 3rd patrol with Dimitri, as you finally asked a question that had been bugging you this entire time. So, why entertain them in the first place? Can't they just go to their rooms and charge on their own?
Machines built to entertain guests. Entertaining guests make machine happy. At night there are no guests, so machines become not happy. They become restless. To avoid them being unhappy and do stupid things, night shift deal with them like toddlers. At least that's how Dimitri deals with machines. If you get job, you can do whatever you want to deal with machines. But most important, they do not break anything. They break anything, you have to pay with own salary. He shrugged. Besides, boss is a douche.
You gulped. You think?
Yes. But also, there is one more thing.
One more thing?
Duh. The little lizard boy.
You called?
Growled a metallic voice as Montgomery Gator approached both of you from behind. You squeaked and hid behind your mentor. Dimitri blinked and suppressed a blush, but still stretched out his arm back so his hand gently rested on your shoulder affirmingly.
Terminator!
Snarled Monty.
I was hoping you'd be here today.
The bot cracked his knuckles.
I haven't forgotten last time.
And what the hell are you talking about?
Dimitri huffed.
Machine is unruly. Dimitri deal with unruly machine.
Huh? What?
Other night god Vanessa let lizard get away with things like trashing room or playing golf until battery ran out. Dimitri don't play like that.
The giant guard took a very intimidating step forward.
This not take long, Intern. Please go to parts and services and wait for lizard.
I won't break this time. They gave me back my upgrades from before the fire.
Dimitri chuckled.
Then fight will be fair for once, lizard.
Fight? Both Dimitri and Monty looked at you.
Dimitri thought.
Isn't it obvious? Well, it's what it cracked my knuckles.
Duh.
You felt stupid. And gulped. But, isn't that against the rules?
Lizard boy don't care about rules. And when lizard boy don't care about rules, Dimitri won't either. Now go. Dimitri will share his proshki with you if Intern does favor.
You nodded quickly before running off. What in the world was happening behind you? That didn't matter. You were way too scared. And once inside parts and services, you just sat down on a chair, twiddling your thumbs. But eventually, you gave in to your anxiety. You huddled over to the one security screen in the dingy animatronic maintenance room and clicked through the cameras. You were lucky. This one was connected to where Dimitri and Monty were at. And you clicked just at the right time. You gasped and put a hand over your mouth. Dimitri had lifted the heavy animatronic up. At first, it looked like a really aggressive bear hug. But then, he arched his back. "No fucking way," you said out loud as you watched the security guard suplex the gator. For a moment, the two lie down on the ground. The robot jittered a bit, clearly damaged by the move, while Dimitri looked incredibly exhausted and beat up. Holy shit, this guy was a mad lad, you thought. But you couldn't stop smiling, grinning from ear to ear. Why was your heart beating so fast? "Oh no!" you shouted as the gator got up first. But then, the man slowly got up too. Both opponents looked at each other. Was it anger? No, it wasn't. It was something else. And then, the robot stretched one of his hands out. Dimitri took it. It was the manliest handshake you have ever seen. Then Monty turned around and left out of camera view as the night guard walked the opposite direction. This hadn't been anger. It was respect. Quietly you waited for the animatronic, who arrived 5 minutes later. There were no words exchanged between the two of you outside of a quick greeting. He lay down in the protective dome. You strapped him in and then turned on the repair arms. And once that was finished, the robot spoke up.
Thanks, intern. Word of advice. I'm pretty sure you will get the job. So far, every intern who knew the dome repair codes got the job in the end.
You smiled. Thanks, Monty. He gave you the side eye.
If you want, you could call me Lizard Boy, like the guy up there does. Also, he's most likely in the employee lounge licking his wounds. I'd go there if I were you.
And with that, the robot left. You sighed and stretched. What a crazy night. You were so exhausted and drowsy. However, not wanting to waste any second, you rushed as fast as you could to the lounge as instructed. There, like earlier, sat Dimitri. His shirt torn, in just the right places to show off his muscle, with a few bloodstains. And some black ones that were clearly machine oil. "Dimitri?" you asked as you looked at him. He raised his head to return your gaze.
"Intern."
His nose was completely busted, and bleeding quite heavily. Plus, his right eye seemed to be swelling quickly. The tiny paper handkerchief he used to stop the bleeding was already completely soaked. What a pathetic attempt. "Oh, jeez!" You sighed and walked behind him, and opened the employee fridge that was hidden behind two lockers. Brian had told you about it. The day shift guard hid liquor there. Quickly you grabbed a bottle of beer. Then you grabbed 2 decently clean towels from a rag. One you wrapped around the bottle, the other you quickly swung around the guard's neck. He protested, but you had none of it. Stepping next to him, one you wrapped around the bottle, the other you quickly swung around the guard's shoulders, instructing him to push that against his nose. He protested, but you had none of it, as you stepped next to him. With one hand in his neck, you pressed the toweled bottle gently onto the bridge of his damaged nose. He didn't even flinch. Did you not press hard enough, or was he just battle-hardened? Probably just battle-hardened.
Ugh. You have very soft hands,
he muttered, and you blushed hard, making him smile. Okay. After 5 minutes, you went back to the fridge and swapped the bottles to keep the towel as cool as possible. Meanwhile, he held his neck pillow up to not make a bloody mess around the floor. You continued this for a while, until you spoke up. This, was very stupid of you.
Duh. But it was fun.
He laughed, before shuddering in pain. Limit your activity, you big baby.
He smirked. Ugh, been a while since Dimitri had been called baby.
You smiled gently. I can... You looked at his bulging muscles and blinked. Certainly tell. 15 minutes later, the bleeding had finally stopped, and you smiled.
Ever consider becoming medic in military?
You shook your head. I'm not made for that. I'm too soft.
Duh, understandable. But Dimitri would gladly have had you in his platoon.
Once again, your face flushed. Compliments just did that to you. Are you ex-military?
Duh,
he huffed.
Ugh. Tell you what, little intern. I will give Amir good word, and recommend you for the night shift. You can actually deal with the daycare machine without making him cry. That is rare.
You shuffled uncomfortably. So you don't like finger paint? He shrugged.
Ugh. Red color reminded me of comrade who shot himself during training exercise.
He chuckled darkly.
Ironically, Dimitri never saw battlefield. Dimitri was only sent to board there twice, to support people there. Since, I was in military reserve force.
Interesting. He chuckled again.
Brian calls me Terminator because of it.
You didn't want to tell him that actually everyone in the Pizzaplex called him that.
Dimitri is guessing because he thinks Dimitri killed people.
You bit your lower lip.
What's wrong? Spit it out.
Nothing, just... I don't think you're a Terminator. He smiled.
Ugh. What do you think Dimitri is then?
A bear. Well, I would say the less hostile ones. Maybe a black bear? I heard they're surprisingly timid. For bears. Dimitri laughed wholeheartedly, even though it risked opening his nose once again.
Dimitri liked that. Dimitri liked that a lot. You're a very good person, little intern.
He slapped you on the back, sending a quake throughout your entire body. It made your toes curl. Were you getting horny? Oh god, you were. How are you supposed to deal with that? No. Internally, you turned your hands to fists. You would work here, and you shouldn't risk it. Just yet, by getting involved with romance so soon. But then again, maybe you could open up the window of opportunity just a little bit. In a joking tone, you said, You're a good man, Dimitri. Do you have a girlfriend? Luckily, he shook his head.
Let Dimitri think. Dimitri had girlfriends. There were certain troubles, though, in their relationships.
He didn't elaborate further. Mysterious, you thought. Meanwhile, all he could think of was the girlfriends he hurt with his impressive size. It was a blessing and a curse. The early morning shift arrived 2 hours later, but by then you had fallen asleep in the giant's lap. The change in sleep schedule finally getting the better of you. Gently, the guard awoke you, and then sent you home, with an embarrassed blush on your face. However, when your boss Amir finally arrived, he retreated with Dimitri in his office. "How's the girl?" asked the boss without much fanfare. The knight got shrugged.
Intern good girl. Little green behind ears, but good girl. Dimitri can teach. Dimitri, recommend for the night shift. If she manages the schedule change, of course.
The man rubbed his chin. I was thinking janitor.
That would be waste of good employee. She did outstanding work with the machines, and if she continues this, I have no trouble recommending her.
And quietly, the man added, and this would lead for more sleep time for Dimitri. He was secretly hoping you joining would lead to less hours work for him. Fine. If she keeps up with the schedule, I'll hire her by the end of the internship next month. Of course, I expect daily reports. When she fucks up, it's gonna be janitor or she's out.
Dimitri expect nothing less from Amir. Thank you, sir.